President, no such set of proposals or anything. Probably because John Kerry was, was in Nantucket windsurfing or whatever. Senator Ron Johnson, we spoke with him just before this news broke, but we talked to him about ISIS at length. Watch.
Then, after empty threats and empty promises, the administration turned away from Syria again for another year. Until ISIS shocked the world by occupying large parts of Iraq and declaring a new state.
The buildup of ISIS in Iraq and Syria was incredibly predictable, Andrea. We reported about it. Reporters risked their lives going into Syria to talk about this buildup of extremists in the country, yet nothing seemed to have been done, and now we have a very serious situation.
Yeah, and that's NBC News, folks. And joining us now, as promised, Senator Ron Johnson, Republican from the great state of Wisconsin, where, by the way, and member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and the Homeland Security Committee. Senator, you know very well that the President of the United States, instead of working on a plan for ISIS or a strategy, since he told us on Thursday he has none, instead of working on that yesterday, he was in your state trashing Republicans, trashing anybody who succeeded in this country, trashing anybody with any wealth, and demagoguing the minimum wage issue.
Well, I'm well aware of that, Steve. You know, the White House actually invited me to greet the president, and I said, hey, I'm happy to take about 5 hours out of my day, which is what it would have taken, to greet the president, as long as you would set aside 5 minutes. So I could talk to the president, and really what I want to do is I want to, person to person, look him in the eyeballs and convey to him my sincerity in terms of trying to offer him support if he's willing to take strong and decisive action as it relates to Ukraine and certainly the events in Syria and Iraq. They couldn't carve out 5 minutes of the president's busy schedule, attending the Labor Day picnic. Unbelievable how detached this guy is.
It is. And when you hear Richard Engel say what he said, and today we have the Fox News report that as part of his daily briefings for at least the last year, the president got detailed intelligence on ISIS. And then he comes out and he tells the American public that, hey, I just found out about it basically like all of you on CNN or TV. What is wrong with this man?
Yeah, Steve, I just got to believe, whether it's the debt and deficit or whether it's the events unfolding in the world, he's just denying reality. I mean, we realize he ran on the policy of hope and change, but we realize hope's not a strategy, and wishful thinking is not a successful military tactic. But, Steve, I remember when we were debating the authorization for use of military force in Syria about a year ago, and the Secretary of State, John Kerry, came before our committee, and I asked point blank the question, because we were getting reports that these rebels were more and more being infiltrated by elements of al-Qaeda, and the rebels were more and more being radicalized. Secretary of State Kerry said, no, all the information we're getting shows that the rebels in Syria are becoming more and more moderate as time goes by. Well, we're finding out that that was absolutely false, and that, in fact, the reports we were getting were true, that al-Qaeda's strength was growing in Syria. And, of course, what we're really seeing is ISIS is a group that was actually kicked out of al-Qaeda because they were too radical even for al-Qaeda. I think this has been pretty widely known in the Intelligence Committee, and I think the concern I have is this president is relying on hope, and he literally is denying reality. He just doesn't want to face the tough decisions that only he can make.
Senator, I would like to know what the heck the President of the United States and the Secretary of State were doing over the rest of the weekend. Yesterday, as I mentioned, I told you, and you're well aware of what the President was doing. John Kerry was on Nantucket windsurfing or wind kiting or whatever the heck you call it. And make sure there was a photo op for that to show the world he was doing it. I don't know what they did on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday after we found out they had no strategy, after the world found out they had no strategy. But David Cameron, the Prime Minister of England, he was out and he was doing his work. He made 2 public pronouncements. He addressed Parliament, and he came up with a strategy to protect the homeland, his homeland.
Yeah, Britain has increased their threat level, and I think that's something we ought to seriously consider, if maybe not officially do it. Certainly ramp up our security prior to 9/11 in terms of the homeland. But no, what President Obama did is what he likes to do. He prepared to go out on the campaign trail. He doesn't really like this messy part of governing, the responsibility of commander-in-chief, leader of the free world. You'd much rather go on the campaign trail, speak to adoring crowds, bash Republicans, continue to press domestic policies that simply haven't worked after 5.5 years, and people haven't kind of noticed that President Obama has not exactly increased the security level, whether it's national security or domestic security here in America, but that's what he enjoys doing. He just doesn't like that messy business of governing, apparently.
What did we do in Somalia? Killing the, well, we think we got the al-Shabaab top leader, although maybe you know more than I do. I heard conflicting reports on that. Why the concern with al-Shabaab and Somalia as a national security issue? As a layman, I would say above and beyond the concern of ISIS as a national security issue.
Well, listen, let me give credit to the administration where credit is due. I mean, they are taking that threat seriously. My concern, though, is as much as these people are evil and they deserve to be taken off the face of the earth. My concern is this administration, because of President Obama's commitment to close Guantanamo, that maybe we aren't capturing some of these high-value targets when we might have capability. Now, let me moderate that from the standpoint. I realize capturing these individuals is no easy feat whatsoever. But I think we really have pretty much a knee-jerk reaction in this administration because we've got no place to store these terrorists, because we don't want to put them in Guantanamo. Our only policy option is to use drone strikes and kill them. Listen, they deserve to be killed, but I really would rather have a more robust policy of trying to capture and detain and glean the intelligence from these individuals when we possibly can, because, Steve, our number one line of defense against this asymmetric threat of global terrorism literally is a strong and robust intelligence gathering capability, and that's something this president obviously isn't really taking advantage of because he's been briefed for a year and he wasn't. He called ISIS a JV team after they took over Fallujah back in January.
Right, while he was being briefed, apparently, yes.
Yeah. Now, I wonder if that was something he had lived, or whether that's what his briefing papers show.
Yeah.
If that's the case, we got to really question who's briefing him.
Let me ask you: do you know, and can you tell us if Ahmed Abdi Godane, the Somali rebel leader, the leader of al-Shabaab, was he killed?
I don't have any other intelligence that you're not hearing in the news report,
Okay.
so I can't confirm that.
Let me ask you, Senator, one other question. Kirsten Gillibrand wrote a book, and she, in the book, accused several members of the Senate of approaching her in the Senate gymnasium and elsewhere, and either telling her she's getting too porky, or I like my women porky, or you do well to lose some weight, you're getting too porky, whatever. But she didn't name names. Do you think that that's fair, and do you believe that, as some do, she's not naming names because they might be Democrats?
Well, first of all, it was not me, and I'll be, quite frankly, I've never seen that kind of behavior in the United States Senate. I mean, it's actually a pretty collegial place, pretty professional. I have never seen that type of behavior. That's all I can say. That's been my experience. So,
do you doubt that she is telling the truth?
Well, I wasn't there.
Right.
I wasn't there, so I can't express an opinion. I've just never witnessed any kind of comments like that myself.
Yeah, you don't think she's laying the groundwork for a Hillary run, to portray the old. The Senate is an old boys network, and and poor women are treated this way and that way.
Well, if you're going to throw out accusations, my guess is you probably ought to name names. If you're going to throw around those kind of accusations, you ought to give people a chance to defend themselves.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Senator, great talking to you, sir. Thank you very much. Keep up the fight for our safety.
Have a great day, Steve.
You too. Senator Ron Johnson, ladies and gentlemen, Republican from the great state of Wisconsin, where the president was out just pathetic. It's like they want to sue me for doing my job. Sue me. It's in the face of a crisis, where he admits we have no strategy. Yet David Cameron came up with a strategy over the weekend and announced it and is ready to implement it. At least a strategy for protecting the homeland, his homeland. Now our president, our leader, needs to protect our homeland with a strategy against ISIS. It's not very difficult. Just copy everything Cameron did. if you can't think of anything on your own. Call the Secretary of State back from Nantucket. You stop parading around the country, trashing those who are successful in this country, and get to work. All right, folks, the Malzberg panel is next.